Hello everybody and welcome back to the ESL UK Premiership. My name is Munchables and with me, I was going to say as ever, just by habit. I suppose that's not really the case. It's Will Frozen Dawn Burgess. And how are you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good.
Did you have a good little break there?
Oh, you know, I loved it. Got a nice little glass of water because these lights are so hot.
It is a warm studio. Now, just to inform you guys of what is actually going on right now. Unfortunately, one of our teams, I believe it's GLB, is struggling to actually field their roster right now, and I can inform you that they have been late enough at this stage to forfeit their first map in this best of three. Fingers crossed they can actually get a player into this lobby so we can get this first series underway. You know, I think it's pretty much worst case scenario that we end up missing the first series of the Premiership, but fingers crossed it'll all be resolved fairly shortly. But I mean, so I think at this point we've already kind of talked a lot about the individual matchups between these two teams. Like, let's start to talk about what we're expecting to see here in terms of meta. We spoke about mid lane champions specifically, but what kind of compositions are you expecting to see coming into this?
So this meta is kind of all about getting first tower and then grouping up and either tower diving or sort of being such a team fight threat that you can just force people off towers, bulldoze through them, and kind of essentially get yourself ahead in gold so that you can just win team fights against the opposing team so they don't really have any choices. And that is a kind of general meta. So most champions that you see are very team fight orientated champions, and then you see the odd split pusher that can kind of throw a curveball at those kind of drafts.
Yeah, absolutely. And sorry, I was just reading lobby chat there and trying to stay up to date on the situation, but
sure.
Yeah, just waiting for a final player to come back in. I think we actually have full rosters if we have one more player come back in that left earlier. So, fingers crossed, we're actually going to be able to get into this and we will have a series on our hands. So, good news, everyone. We should be able to get this going. Sorry about the little bit of a delay to start things off. Wouldn't be a UK scene without it, though.
Of course not.
Yeah, so we're going to be jumping into TCA versus GLB. And this is kind of an interesting concept to me, because we're kind of getting to a point now from I feel like I'm getting to be one of the old guys within the UK scene. I've been casting for quite a fair while now, and I feel like TCA versus GLB is starting to become a matchup of these like older organizations, even though in my eyes these organizations are both still fairly new.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly true. I think a lot of the sort of big names in the last 9 months or so, like Infused, Choke, Exertus, FM, and I guess Manlight for that sort of 4-month period. None of them have League of Legends teams anymore. So a lot of the organizations that have been around for ages but kind of overshadowed by those previous organizations are actually taking this opportunity to sort of rise into the Premiership and other areas and other tournaments. So I think I completely agree with what you're saying, that these teams that have, or these orgs that have been around, are sort of finally getting their moment to shine. And I think this is it for orgs, especially an org like GLB, for example.
Yeah, M&M as well, kind of stepping up to the very top of the scoreboard. And I think M&M has always been one of those teams that's kind of hovered around the middle of the table, and now this is kind of their opportunity to really show what they're made of. But I think there's a similar storyline there in terms of players as well. We've had a lot of players kind of ascend the UK Premiership and move on into Challenger scene and into LCS as well. So it's almost like the entire player pool has been refreshed to some extent. Yeah,
I mean, one of the best examples could be someone like Jet, for example, coming in at the jungle. I mean, we had in the previous Premiership, the best jungler was, well, there was Maxlaw, of course, Impaler, Furion, and Plex, who are the kind of like 4 sort of top junglers by far in that sort of in the Premiership. And then Jet is suddenly arguably one of the top 2 junglers, sort of almost out of nowhere. But he's been playing in the Null for ages. He won Null live with his team Aston Aunties, I believe, and they're suddenly now on TCA, and they're coming in as first seed of this tournament. So he's kind of done this massive curve of sort of improvement, and obviously I really hope that it can sustain. So.
Yeah. I love that we're finally starting to see some Null players step into the fray as well, because for a very long time there was this kind of thing of the Null doesn't count, and there was this horrible mindset in the UK scene of that kind of view, and now we're starting to see some of these Null players actually step into the UK Premiership. And obviously we had the whole Null squad that ended up disbanding towards the end of Season 2? Season 3?
It was over
Season 2.
Christmas, because I coached that team up until Christmas, and then I started to coach Manlight, and it didn't qualify for that Premiership, the one in January. So Was that season 3?
So they were the last one they were in is season 2 then.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there was that whole
Rest in
kind
peace,
of thing.
by the way.
Yeah, all right. To be honest, that was a shame
It
because
was.
the null team was like starting to show some promise.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was building up momentum, but then, alas, poor Yorick. I knew him well. I've lost the quote. Never mind. But yeah, so now we're actually starting to see. I don't know where I was going with that. Now we're starting to see
That was great.
some of the UK, some of the newer players actually step into the UK scene. I mean, we've got Batmani Begins, which
Yep.
is kind of that old UOB Storm roster, or like some of the players from that mixed in with others as well. And obviously, as you mentioned, we've got Jet, who's looking to be one of the top in the UK. But apologies about the delay, guys. I do not want to fluff forever, believe it or not. I know it's a common Twitch chat belief that it is the casters that are holding up the game, but I assure you, I am waiting for this game too. I want this all to kick off as soon as possible, and we will be able to get this underway as soon as possible for you guys. But before we actually jump into the series, let's just remind you all, in case you weren't watching right at the very start, that our finals have already been announced, and you can join us for them at Comic-Con this year. That's in October the 28th. To the 30th, and you can already buy your tickets. That's over at mcmcomiccon.com/London, and I believe tickets are already starting to get scarce for the weekend tickets. I know Saturday and Sunday are already kind of getting towards selling out, so don't wait too long on this one if you actually want to come see us at finals. But yeah, that's definitely going to be an awesome event, but not just League of Legends, Overwatch and Counter-Strike finals will be there as well, so a lot to watch out for. And of course, Comic-Con's just a fantastic event anyway, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I must admit that I've actually never been, but a lot of my friends went. Yeah, but my friends went to one about a year ago. I guess it was like the equivalent. And they all went and they absolutely loved it. I think I was on holiday actually, but but they all said it was incredible. So I'm kind of, I'm planning hopefully to be going as well this one coming up.
This
so
MCM.
Yeah, this MCM, this particular one. Yeah, so I mean, it's LANs and events and Comic-Cons, of course, are always very exciting. You get to meet the players that you flame in solo queue or in the lobby, for example, or whatever. No, there's no flame going on, guys. Don't worry.
No flame in this Zimzam, but I think we actually have 10 players in the lobby now, so I think they're just rearranging so we have them in the right positions, and we might just be able to get this game underway. As we informed you earlier, GLB are 1-0 down in this series because they were unable to bring a roster for a little while, but they have some players, so we will be able to get this best of 3 underway. But I've got to say, your prediction is looking far more convincing than it. I mean,
well,
a 2-0 isn't that much of an ask
Yeah.
from TCA at this stage. They basically have to win a best of 1 to get the 2-0 score.
Yeah, so TCA, I mean, from this scenario, not too much changes for the teams. So, if typically in this situation, you always plan draft and strategies for both sides anyway. So TCA obviously planned their first draft around blue side. They get a default win on that side, so they then move to the red side, which is their less favoured side. But they would have still prepared for the red side anyway, knowing that it would happen in a best of 3. So there might be a couple of adaptations, but a free win is a free win from TCA's point of view. And obviously, none of the players want to be waiting because they're kind of all itching to play. But at the same time, they're going to be happy with the fact that there's one less game for them to play in their eyes, at least.
Absolutely. Well, I think we are just about ready on this one. The players are all confirming that they are ready. I think we've had a confirmation from both teams, so we should be able to get this game underway. They're asking if the casters are ready. I can assure you that we definitely are at this stage. We can't wait to get going. And ladies and gentlemen, Champion Select is underway. Let's finally get on into this one. Apologies about the delay, but we are finally here. GLB going to be up on this blue side and TCA over on the red side. And, TCA originally would have had the pick of blue side, I believe. But, with how it's all turned out, it's ended up with TCA on the red side now because of that first game being cancelled. But you were saying to me that maybe you would have diagnosed a red side start for TCA anyway.
Yeah, so TCA, I think, due to the way that they draft, they really like locking in Graves and Braum on their first rotation red side, and it works really well for them. As well as the fact that counter-picking for Yopper is very important because they very often blind pick for Krog. So these kind of things make me think that TCA's red side is actually stronger than their blue side, even though they opted into the blue side when given the choice of side. But it's one of those things that's kind of conflicting opinions. They might just have a better strategy on blue side that they think works. It's just historically I've noticed their red side being very strong.
Well, we mentioned earlier how the bans were very likely to be mid lane oriented. Obviously, with Nocturnal Plex in the mix, he maybe needs to get rid of some of the champions he doesn't want to deal with, being a jungle main. But Vladimir, Cassiopeia, and Anivia already taken out, and Tom Kench going to be the fourth ban, coming out from TCA. So, I mean, what do you think about this Tom Kench ban? Do you think that's going to be targeted towards Zonny there, or do you think it's just kind of part of the ban process?
So it's not a meta ban exactly, but at the same time, Tom is very frustrating to deal with. He can cause a lot of problems for teams. He's arguably a flex pick as well, being able to play in both top and support, so I guess just a champion they don't want to play against. And maybe there's someone on GLB that they know really likes to play that champion, or just they've maybe been tipped off, but who knows. But I think it's most likely a pseudo target ban / something they hate playing against.
Now going to be the next ban as well, so that's going to be the ban phase just about out of the way, as the final ban is going to be Graves, which interesting because Jet, this is a champion that he absolutely adores to play, and yet it's TCA that are the ones banning it out.
Yeah, it's a little bit, it's an interesting adaptation from I-58. With the Graves ban, they're basically conceding the Elise or Rek'Sai, going over either side. Obviously GLB opting into the Rek'Sai, who's got a different role to Elise, but they're very similar in the sense they're both the kind of ganking junglers at the moment. What I am predicting, though, is a Braum lock-in for Raisins is typically what he'd want to go for, but I'm actually proven completely wrong.
Yeah. I will just say as well, despite what the overlay says, the advantage is over towards TCA, not GLB. It was GLB that failed to present a roster in time, so they are 1-0 down in this series. So ignore the overlay. It is, in fact, TCA that are ahead, but we've already got a few champions rattling on in. Shen is going to be one of the locks, and I've got to say, I'm not all too surprised.
No, Shen is just such a strong champion right now. Allows you as well to play so heavily around bot lane if you need to, and as we mentioned before, Deadly being such a sort of carry for TCA, coming into his own, makes a lot of sense that Shen gets locked away. And Karma, of course, is such a great champion to early rotate due to her sort of flexibility. The only thing is we haven't seen Krog play it in the last several weeks. So, then again, we haven't really seen Raisins do very well on range support. So actually, it's kind of a sort of an enigma here where both players don't typically play it, but at the same time, are locking it in. Oh, well, they have locked it in here, so.
There we go, Talaya as well, going to be locked in. So, curious to see how this one is going to pan out. And I'm going to put you on the spot now. So,
here we go.
With Shen and Karma being the two first lock-ins here for TCA, what does that tell you about the lineup that they're going to be bringing? What does that tell you about the composition that they're looking towards?
Well, the really nice thing about Shen and Karma is that it actually doesn't give it really pretty much anything away about your comp. So, the fact that Karma's a flex pick alone is enough. But then Shen is just, he's fine in team fights, but he can also split push, as I mentioned before, to sort of help change and adapt the sort of team fighting situation. So both of them really are just so nice because you can pick them early on and you can just build them into any simple team comp you want. Okay,
well, we've now got a Hecarim and a Lucian locked in, so this is starting to feel a little bit all in at this stage. Hecarim has been similarly to Vlad, just kind of all over the meta at the moment. Very powerful champion currently. So I can't say I'm overly surprised to see that one locked in. I will be surprised to see it in the hands of Krogson. But I don't think that's what the Ghost is for. And I've got to say, I'm a little bit disappointed that Cassiopeia was banned out, because I just wanted to actually cast Krogson on Cassiopeia myself.
Well, Plex would have picked it 100%, I think, honestly.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think they would have taken it, but yeah.
Okay,
it would have been beautiful.
Well, now that we've got a couple more lock-ins, it's certainly starting to look like this is very much going to be a game based around team fighting with that Hecarim ultimate. And I'm curious to see what kind of pressure they can put across the game using this Hecarim in the jungle. But on the other side, Malphite lock-in as well. So, is that going to make GLB an unstoppable force, do you think?
No, because, the problem is that it's just that Malphite gets heavily out-pressured by Shen until he's tanky enough to just walk into the wave and just E it and then walk out of the wave. Shen will have a lot of pressure in this matchup. The only sort of saving grace is that Malphite can really easily stop the Shen stand united, of course, with just, click shot ult, essentially. Well, it's not a click shot, of course, but essentially the same thing. So I think the Malphite will do a lot of work if it's allowed to get really late into the game, but I still think it's on the Shen to kind of utilize the pressure that he will have in this in this situation.
Absolutely. Well, we're just waiting for our final pick of the game, and then we'll be locked in for this series. But now that we've got GLB's lineup completely down, what is your kind of analysis of this composition that they've put together?
So it's very interesting that they've opted into Malphite to handle the Shen specifically, because they're essentially saying that we really want to group up and team fight you, but other aspects of their draft, don't necessarily sort of help towards this. So if you want to pick that kind of composition where you just want to group up at sort of around 20 minutes, you can't be too far behind. And I feel like their bot lane's going to fall very far behind, and blind picking Talia isn't really the way to go if you want to get your mid lane ahead. So a lot of it's going to be down onto Lifestyle to get their lanes ahead, which will allow their comp to group up in the mid game and snowball off their sort of big team fight engaged presence that they do have.
Okay, so you mentioned blind picking Talia is probably not the way to go. Give me an example of where you should be picking Talia for the guys at home.
Sure. So the occasions you can pick Talia are pretty much when you know you're in a matchup that's fine for you, so you can already see their mid laner, or in a case where all other mid laners that you are concerned about playing against have been banned out. Now, arguably in this scenario, with Cassiopeia, Vladimir, and Anivia banned from Kroxen, she was very comfortable playing into what was most likely going to be an Orianna, because Kroxen typically would pick Orianna in this situation. But this Syndra pickup from Kroxen is really going to throw sort of a spanner into the works, because this will certainly not be a matchup that Plex is comfortable playing or should have had much experience playing, unless he's got super lucky in solo queue and happens to have played it loads, which is very, very unlikely. So Kroxen opting into picking this matchup is very interesting.
One thing I will say, though, is in terms of kind of lane dominance, Syndra and Cassiopeia have a lot in common. Syndra is renowned as kind of the lane bully. She's the epitome of that style of play where you just want to pressure onto the opponents. And Cassiopeia, that's her style in lane isn't all that different from that same exact way of playing. So I'm curious to see what Lifestyle's decisions are going to be like this game, whether he's going to kind of tend to lean towards the mid lane to try and make sure that Kroxen can't get out of control.
I think that's certainly something he has to do. Hecarim, since his nerfs, his sort of slight nerfs recently, in the if not the last patch, the patch before last, I think, Rek'Sai kind of has this edge on him just about, where he can kind of out-pressure him throughout sort of most points of the game now. Obviously, he's still got this massive team fighting ultimate that is a huge threat, but as a result, I think that Lifestyle will have the control over the Hecarim, and therefore will be the one who gets to dictate pressure. And I think putting that pressure onto Kroxen, as you mentioned, is absolutely critical here, because a fed Syndra is entirely unstoppable. I mean, the only thing is, that being said, at least Braum and Malphite can kind of do some work to hold the Syndra back, using his wall, and of course, Syndra being immobile into a Malphite's not too fun, but even so, Syndra getting ahead is just terrifying to deal with.
Absolutely. Well, let's start to look down towards this bottom lane then, this 2 versus 2 matchup, because, we've moved away from the lane swap meta now, and we're into this kind of actual lane battling meta. So, Ezreal, Braum up against Lucian and Karma, but interestingly, Braum running Ignite. What do you think to that? Because in my head, on paper, I would always give the advantage to that Lucian Karma lane in that scenario, so I find it interesting that they would run Ignite.
No, well, the reason they're running Ignite is because essentially it's very difficult for the Braum to be able to get an exhaust onto anyone. Yep. So he's not going to really be in range of the Syndra, because he's going to get knocked back or stunned up or CC'd by pretty much the entire lineup from TCA. So getting an exhaust down is going to be very difficult. So he's kind of just opting into the Ignite so that he has some kind of lane pressure there into the Lucian Karma, which, as you very correctly said, is by far the more dominant lane matchup. I mean, not only do ranged supports typically beat melee supports, but Ezreal also takes a very long time to scale compared to Lucian, who's just going to be strong throughout the game. So essentially, what we're going to see there is, whilst Braum does have the Ignite, the pressure is still in the favour of Lucian Karma.
Okay, well, and I've got to say, I think it's going to be a lot down to junglers as well.
Absolutely.
I think Jet is going to have a lot to say about that lane, and that's another kind of aspect that you can kind of give to TCA here in terms of lineups, in terms of the matchup. Is we already mentioned how Lifestyle, he's going to have to look towards mid lane. There is that dominant mid lane in the form of Syndra there. Kroxen, I mean, we've already mentioned how terrifying that guy is in lane. With their jungler having to stay towards mid, if Kroxen can play defensive, Jet can pretty much roam free.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly true. The only thing is playing defensively into Talia can be quite difficult just because she has so much control over the wave. But if she does go for trades, she will push the wave into you. But arguably, Syndra is the same. But I think the intricacies in the mid lane matchup and essentially who is the better player in virtue of who controls the wave better will pretty much dictate the pace of the sort of early going into mid-game, unless one of the junglers does an extremely large amount to pressure elsewhere on the map. So, for example, if you were to see Jet putting a lot of pressure on his, with his bot lane, then you could actually see a lot of snowballing in that regard instead. But I still think mid lane, as you mentioned, is definitely the place to watch.
Absolutely. And I've got to say, we've even got a traditional Karma skin coming in
from
Raisins. So, we've got some old school players here. I've got to give a quick shout out to Raisins because he's one of the nicest LoL players in the UK. I think I've met him a couple of times, and every single time I've met him, stellar guy, absolutely great guy. Yep. But regardless of whether he's a nice guy, it's all about whether or not he's going to be able to win this match. We already said that kind of TCA, off the base, in fact, I haven't asked you just outright, off the base of this draft, do you think TCA are kind of ahead in terms of the drafting phase?
I think so. The only thing I would probably change is Jet on Elise would be very nice to see. I'm just not a huge fan of the Hecarim at the moment in virtue of his sort of nerfs. Elise applies a lot more pressure. But that being said, I like TCA's draft because they have pressure in the bottom lane. They have at least some pressure in the mid lane. Top lane's definitely in Shen's favour, and then it's just about how Jet can manipulate the pressure in the lanes. Whereas GLB a little bit on the back foot with their draft. A lot of things sort of have to come together for them to be able to take leads in this situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've made it, ladies and gentlemen. We're finally onto Summoner's Rift for the first time tonight, and it means we are going to be able to get this game underway. I've got to say, after a little bit of waiting on that one, but it is finally here. The UK Premiership has officially begun for League of Legends, and it's going to be TCA up against GLB. In case you've only just joined us, TCA are currently 1-0 up in this series, not because of any feat regarding League of Legends, just purely because they were able to turn up to the game on time.
I feel like it's the first step for any team is to be organised. The second step is to actually be able to play well.
You could say it's the first step for any organisation to be organised.
Oh my god!
There's a little bit of logic there, I think.
Well,
a little bit of logic.
No. Well, no.
All right, fair play. We'll move on. But
I'm going to shut you down, and this is really good, and then I'm going to commend you. Okay.
At least you kind of handled it softly. But either way, we're going to see, interestingly, different jungle starts coming out here. We've got Jet over towards their blue buff, and Lifestyle as well over in that top lane, going to be starting off on Gromp.
So the typical jungle start is starting topside so that you can give your jungle camp to your bottom lane, to give them a little help in lane. Their Jet starting bottom side means that he has a specific jungle route in mind, or that he is very afraid of Rek'Sai stealing his red buff, which is something you typically do against Nidlees, for example, if you're particularly scared. But we just saw there actually Plex doing the classic Talia play where you shove the lane and then go and steal a couple of Wraiths with your Q and then come back to lane. Super annoying to deal with.
And I've got to say, Plex is hammering down the pressure onto Krogson here in the mid lane. And, I mentioned Plex is one of these players that is mechanically sound, and I don't know how much mid lane he's played in solo queue, but so far he's giving Krogson a run for his money. And a similar situation down in the bottom lane as well. We were saying how Lucian typically has the advantage in most lanes, but Deadly has been poked down pretty significantly.
Yeah, I think this matchup, a lot of it is the rush for level 2 that happens between the bottom lane, but because Deadly and Raisins didn't get the Frog XP, the Gromp XP, they are... Actually, no, they did, didn't they?
They did, yeah.
So they actually did. So I don't know why they got chunked out so hard in that matchup then. Maybe just a slight misplay. Ooh, Plexen, Krogsen, really going at it. This is going to be quite an explosive mid lane matchup, as we did mention.
I love how both of these mid laners, it's like they really want to go in. They want to go ham on this one, but first of all, they're nervous about jungle presence, and second of all, they don't want to kind of lose out on that lane situation in terms of where the minions are. But here we go, Lifestyle going in, the Ignite is down, and that is first blood, going the way of Nocturnal Plex.
Really, really well played by Lifestyle there to sort of secure that flash knock-up. Does look like, though, Jet's going to go and steal his blue buff in response to this, and Lifestyle just sort of doesn't care. Instead, he's going to go and try and take Scuttle Crab or something. But a blue buff trade for first blood is completely worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. They're going to be able to at least get something off of the back of that, and he's going to be able to go towards Gromp as well, but actually both summoners already been burned on both sides of this mid lane, so, and on the jungler, not to mention for lifestyle. So, you know, a lot of commitment into that kill from GLB.
Yeah, and this is something that really sort of, well, shows better junglers in sort of head-to-head matchups is who can exploit like the opponent's summoner spells or lack thereof. You know, I think now because both mid lanes are so easy to gank, or at least relatively easy to gank in virtue of not having summoner spells, that the jungler the better jungler is going to be the one who gets his mid laner even more ahead.
Absolutely, and trade after trade going on in the top lane, but Yopper, starting to really make a bit of a lead for himself. He's getting a little bit ahead in CS, but more importantly, he's getting ahead in pressure, and that lane is actually pushing in his favor as well. So Yopper really taking control of the situation.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I mean, Yopper, or Shen particularly in this matchup, is just going to be the more dominant one until, Malphite's sort of finished the Sunfire Cable 1.5 items in, really, where you can just walk up to the wave and slam it. But for now, it's going to be a case of Shen pushing in the Malphite and then trying to apply his ult pressure, while the Malphite just, sort of mulls along, maybe waits for the perfect TP.
And that's one of the things about Malphite as well, is he's one of these heroes that, or champions, sorry, I've been casting too many games apparently, but he's one of these champions that he doesn't necessarily mind gold that much. Actually in trouble there, Luki getting incredibly low in the top lane, but will be able to walk away with his life in the end. But talk to me about these compositions then, because we've talked about kind of which one's ahead, we've talked about what champions have been picked. What are the win conditions for these guys? What kind of playstyles are you expecting to see from both of these teams?
Well, as I sort of touched on for GLB, as they're on blue side, I mean, essentially they have to not fall behind early game, so that they can just group up mid-game and have these sort of massive wombo combo team fights that I expect to see from Talia, from the Malphite. And on the topic of sort of not falling behind, they're going to be very reliant on Talia roam, Malphite, TP ults, things like that. Contrasting that on the side of TCA, a lot of it's going to be how well Yopper can pressure to utilize his ultimate most effectively to snowball their very snowbally lanes. I mean, Lucian Karma very snowbally, the same for Syndra. Both they can sort of really take leads and snowball away with them if they have the right conditions met, and conditions such being Yopper, for example, having pressure in top lane.
Speaking of, we do have a bit of a roam coming out here. Jet going to be heading to the top lane, and you can see Koroxen on the way as well. Luki is in a whole heap of trouble, and that's going to be the Shadow Dash locking him down. Yopper more than happy to pick up that kill, and Koroxen not even needed in the end. He actually spent a lot of that time just dropping a pink and clearing a couple of wards in the river in the end. I think he realised that there was no way he was getting there in time.
Well, I think Luki held his flash quite rightly. He didn't burn flash, but actually there's a bit of action in the bottom lane.
There certainly is. And Stand United going to come through as well. Yopper looking for even more action. Double flash coming out when he burns that Shadow Dash. But that is going to be the Braum going on down. It's traded 1-for-1 though, and Yopper now is in a whole heap of trouble. He's going to be dropping in just a second, and all in all, that's a double kill going the way of Idouna. And that's not good news when you're looking in the eyes of TCA, In the end, Ezreal getting 2 kills early, that's probably as bad as it gets.
Yeah, Ezreal, of course, one of those champions that really does need to snowball ahead, so him getting just that early gold is just so helpful to get him to the mid-game. But most importantly is the first tower. In this new patch, it rewards so much gold to the team that takes the first tower that this is a real race between mid lane and bottom lane to see who can get the tower first, actually. This is pretty much good. Okay, so it goes to the bottom lane. That is very big for them.
Yeah, it certainly will be, and that is going to mean that now we actually have a pretty significant lead starting to build up in the favour of GLB. It's 3-2 in terms of kills, but when you look at the gold, they're already 1,000 gold ahead of their opponents. We're only 8 minutes into the game. It's not the end of the world, but it's certainly a fantastic start for them. Yopper actually continuing to trade into Luki. And to be honest, at this point, Yopper's just putting his foot down in this top lane and saying, look, this is my lane. The second you come near this minion wave, I am going to punish you incredibly heavily.
Yeah, I mean, Yopper has always been that player for TCA that's been able to do that. Throughout the Contender Cup or the qualifiers for this tournament, he was just this sort of carry player, doubling the CS of Luki so bad here. already, and we're only 9 minutes into the game. So I am expecting Yopper to just really, really be able to apply this pressure. But as we saw there, he TP'd bot lane, and it was counter-ganked by the Plex coming down using his ultimate. So there are answers for GLB to be able to handle Yopper's pressure.
Absolutely. Well, we'll see if that's going to continue to be the case. As Lifestyle going to look over towards his blue buff. Going to give that over to Plex in the end. Did that actually go the way of Plex?
Yeah, it did.
Oh, yeah, it's just the health
It's
animation.
the mastery when he gets an extra 10 HP from Saints of the Ages.
My eyes are playing tricks
It's
on me
really-
there. I
it
was
does
like,
actually animate,
that could have been bad. But Lukey, again in this top lane, just getting bullied so hard by Yopper. And I think we, at this rate, could actually look towards a Flame Horizon if Yopper can just keep this up and it does stay in this 1 versus 1 lane. But that's going to be one of the things, how long do you expect this top lane to stay 1 versus 1?
Well, essentially, I think what should have happened is we should have seen GLB rotate their bottom lane to take the top tower. Because if you rotate into Shen, you deny a lot of his pressure. But instead, they're wanting to prioritize his dragon, probably because it's Infernal Drake. So instead, going for this dragon. Oh,
Lex just got deleted in the mid lane, and Lifestyle's in trouble for himself. He's going to be feared by the ultimate from Jet, and he's going to be slowed on down. Croxton should be able to finish this one. In fact, Jet going to take that one for himself, and it's 2 kills going the way of TCA. That's going to even things up just a little bit more.
Did Plex die with both of his summoners up?
He got deleted.
Did he got one
I caught
shot?
it on my screen. He got absolutely
Ooh,
annihilated. But look at this fight down in the bottom lane. Deadly trying to do his best to block them away, but that Unbreakable doing serious work. But it's not going to be enough. Look at the damage. Stan United comes through as well to save Deadly's life. And that is how you do it. TCA showing that they are truly a team.
Yeah, this is precisely at TCA. Just a lot more synergy across the board here. Their first sort of synergized play didn't go so well due to Plex roaming, but that was clearly a little bit of a one-off here. Now TCA utilizing Jet Pressure to take control of mid lane, and then Yopper to help take control of bottom lane. And most beautifully here is seeing Raisins doing well on a support that isn't Brawl. And I don't mean this to sort of flame him. It's just all of his success that I've seen has been on Braum so far, and finally we're seeing it on another champion, and in the form of Karma as well, who of course couldn't be more different.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've got to say, so far in this mid lane, I'm incredibly impressed by Plex. What a tongue twister right there. Impressed by Plex. He's doing a fantastic job in this 1 versus 1. Crogston just narrowly escapes that one. A very nice flash coming out from him. He would have died had he not flashed that knock-up, but Weaver's Wall is available. Maybe some ridiculously hand play could come out, but I don't think that would be wise.
No, it's super risky to use the wall really aggressively like that, just because it's your pathing is then predictable that you can actually be damaged off it, and then effectively, the entire play fails. So that's something that you typically don't want to happen using sort of the Weaver's Wall like that. But
hello, guys.
Oh, hello. This is I can look at my screen and it's
regrettably updates were available on the Observer PC, but we're going to be able to get back into the match once more. No, we're not. Oh, goodness.
Oh, look, it's someone's Skype.
Dear me. Well, we're back in the map just in time to see the fact that it has, in fact, been paused. So, fantastic stuff coming out here.
Just the faces of people over.
So 2k gold lead in favor of TCA right now. They managed to kind of regain control of the game. They got that Infernal Drake as well, which, in terms of Drakes, they've rolled pretty high on that first Drake, I think it has to be said.
Yeah, Infernal Drake, or rather, first Drake, in my opinion at least, isn't the most important thing. I mean, essentially, it does give you, obviously, a nice damage buff later into the game, and obviously once synergized with Elder Dragon, it is crazy. But essentially, towers are always going to be more important than dragons. The only occasion you should take a dragon is essentially if it's free, and by that I mean there's no towers you could be taking, or because you kind of have to take an objective because they've kind of out-rotated you and taken a tower instead, so you trade a tower for a dragon. But generally speaking, in this meta, towers are just so much more important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the game is going to be underway once more, and we'll pop the scoreboard back up again for you guys as well, so you can see what the gold is going on in this game. But we should be able to get game audio going as well shortly for you guys. But Jungler's having a bit of a duel on that one. They're going to be able to get away both of them as the mid laners start to trend that way and just put a little bit of pressure down.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pressure that can come out of Plex, utilizing his wall, but... Oh, actually...
Oh, Unstoppable Force comes on through. Deadly's in trouble. Already uses his dash, but will be able to get away with his life. Teleport actually goes through there. Yoppa going incredibly ham, and look at the combo coming on out. Plex is going to be the first one to drop, and TCA take the advantage in the fight. It's going to be a disengage coming out from GLB, but there's no way they managed to keep this tower. Krogson coming in from the side as well. He's looking for the stun, and he gets two. Ultimate comes on through, and goodbye, Una. That's going to be the tower going down. They're looking for more kills as well. It's going to be Krogson to take up a double, and what a fight coming out from TCA. The synergy in this squad is unbelievable.
Yeah, and contrast that completely with GLB's lack of coordination in that team fight. They didn't even prioritize targets that well, which is kind of like the step one of team fighting, you know, everyone calling a target and listening to each other. And that just didn't happen there. There seemed to be a huge disarray and mismatch between the teams and between the players. And this, you know, I guess makes sense as the GLB squad was kind of thrown together quite last minute compared to the TCA squad that's been around together for ages, but not looking good for GLB right now. 6k behind as well.
Yeah, and this is a drastically different story to what we saw at the start of the game. GLB were the ones in the driving seat. They were the one that got that first gank off in the mid lane. They were the ones, you know, in the mid lane, they were getting way ahead. And unfortunately, they weren't really able to keep that pressure on, and TCA have been more than happy to set the pace of this game. And I think that's kind of the story that we've been seeing here, is that TCA are more than happy to be the ones to make those plays and decide what's going to be happening in this matchup.
Yeah, precisely. I think they've played around Yoppa super well as well. You know, knowing that he's just so far ahead in CS and that he can essentially have a lot of pressure on the map as a result of this. You know, of course, Shen just being an incredible champion for pressuring the map, especially if you're in a matchup that you can get ahead in, which is precisely what I was concerned about when I saw this Malphite lock-in, that Shen would just be able to run away with it.
Yeah, and well, he has been doing so far. Luckily for GLB, though, Lukey has been able to keep up somewhat in CS. Like, that 30 CS lead has been the same for about, you know, 5 to 7 minutes now. So at least he's not falling behind further. So, you know, silver lining. Still not great to be almost 40 CS down. In fact, over 40 CS now. I guess there was a wave for Yoppa to clear up. But either way, he's just about staying in things right now. But if you look across the scoreboard, it is a sorry sight for TCA. They are not having a good time of it right now. For GLB, sorry, not TCA.
Yeah, and the question now for TCA really is just, you know, how well can they look to push this into a very comfortable lead. You know, taking the outer towers is a very important thing that a lot of teams have to practice very much, because it is actually almost an art. Yoppa here, I imagine, is going to dash over the wall, actually. No.
Well, he's actually getting outnumbered at this point. Uses that shadow dash, but he's all out of cooldowns and he's all out of health as well. Wow. Una going to jump in at the last second to KS that one from his team. But in the end, full team effort to take down that top laner.
And this is precisely what I was talking about with regard to it being an art form, trying to take these outer towers. What you saw there was just complete laziness from TCA, to be honest with you. You know, having Yoppa so deep in the bottom lane without the correct vision is not something you can... It's something that you can practice for and something that you should practice for. It's kind of, essentially kind of just lazy, being like, oh, we're going to push in here. Oh, let's not worry about putting up the exact boards required for it. But, you know, those little mistakes can often happen when you're really comfortably ahead. But
the junglers are 1v1ing Plex, not actually in that role, though, as Jet is going to get deleted. Plex is going to get deleted in the end, sorry. It's chopped on down by the axe, swinging around Hecarim's head. But Krogson could be in trouble, as well as jungle and support charging on after him, but they just don't really have the damage or anything else to commit to this one. In the end, though, Krogson having to flash, as we do see Una coming on in, and here's the combo. Here's the team play coming out of TCA. Once more, Zonny just having to jump away to the minions to get away with his life. Lukey actually just walking straight past TCA. He's not bothered at this stage. He's a Malphite. He's finished his Sunfire, and he's happy to stroll on by. But finally, this mid lane tier 2 is looking to be going down.
Yeah, this is great from TCA. What we saw here was a really, really nice play, you know, capitalizing on good movement into the bottom lane, transitioning this to a mid lane. Arguably, GLB going a little bit too aggressive for Krogson, but at the same time, it's the kind of plays you do have to make when you're behind, these sort of slightly rash, over-aggressive plays. I mean, I don't want to see Yoppa getting caught out again, but I think he's, you know, this time sort of knows he can get out because of slightly better warding here in the bottom side of the map. But yet another Drake goes over to TCA. That's 2 Infernals, I believe.
Yeah, 2 Infernals going to be going their way, so they're starting to rack up that bonus damage at this point. And, you know, obviously it is percent-based, so the later in the game it gets, the more effective that actually is. But, you know, if you can get multiple Infernal Drakes quickly, like, you know, 3 Infernal Drakes is 24%. That's a lot of damage, you know, at the end of the day. Even if you don't have the Elder Drake, 3 Infernals is more than enough.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it's looking like here for TCA. I mean, the kind of RNG in Dragons can kind of be annoying to play with or against sometimes, but you know, if you're commanding a lead and you get a couple of Infernal Drakes, obviously it's very nice. But at the same time, you still have the lead anyway. But yeah, just think I guess they can add insult to injury, I think is how I'd sort of say. You know, you're now fighting against sort of a really uphill battle here, despite the fact, of course, being 6k behind anyway.
I think the way to think about it is, like, in terms of Drakes, these are probably the least punishing Drakes to be behind. Like, when Drake gave gold, that was much worse than the potential. But here we go, Luki actually having to use that Unstoppable Force just to get away, and they will get shut down in the end. Deadly, max range on the culling, and the slow coming on through from Razors just to make sure that that connected in the end. Very nice little bit of play, but TCA now on triple the kills of GLB. And they're already 7,000 gold ahead. This is looking pretty disastrous as the 1 versus 180 carry versus jungler is going to go the way of Deadly. Lifestyle just about escaping from that one. Weaver's wall comes through from Plex and he flashes on forward. Stand United is available though. Hecarim jumps in and almost gets deleted. Jet only just escaping with his life, and Deadly with some excellent kiting will survive to get a kill. That's one going the way of Krogson as well. Double make that as he looks for more. Yopper going to be diving incredibly deep for this one. Gets a little bit of a heal and Krogson will be able to support his top laner. That's TCA dominating another fight.
TCA there with some really, really good synergy. I have no idea how Deadly managed to survive that. I mean, that's just testament to his mechanics right there, to be able to survive that kind of teamfight where everyone piles in on you and you're in the middle. But nice, of course, for TCA to have that kind of synergy to keep him safe. And Deadly still has Flash up, Raisin still has Flash and Exhaust up. So, you know, it's not even like they're looking to potentially be losing the next team fights coming up. They're just in such a dominating position right now. That top lane inhib, of course, out of all the inhibs, it's probably the one that is the least threatening from GLB to lose, because at least you can have someone near the Baron side of things when it comes to spawning in just a few seconds. But at the same time, GLB has got to be pretty demoralized right now. Coming back from this situation is going to be extremely difficult for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I would argue that this is looking to be one of those scenarios that the inhibitor's gone down so early that even if they stall out at this point, they're going to lose so much else around the rest of the map that they're kind of staring down the barrel at this point. And honestly, GLB, they've got to pull something miraculous out at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can sort of envisage happening is some sort of death brush kind of thing where they all sort of group up. TCA gets a little bit lazy with their vision, just sort of walks in slightly blind, and they get massive comboed by the combination of sort of Plex and Ido Una, and of course, you know, the Malphite ult coming in. So something like that, but realistically, it's, you know, very challenging to happen. And of course, making picks into a Shen is very difficult as well, because if he's fast enough with the ult, he just provides such a big shield.
Well, here we go. It's going to be Jet in trouble a little bit here, but the passive doesn't stack up in the end, and it means that the pony is going to trot on another day. But, I mean, I feel like GLB, if they could make one of these picks actually make it count, if they could find Jet there and finish off the kill, that could be something that they needed to actually start to pressure themselves. And in that 4v5 situation, they could potentially make something happen. But unfortunately, they don't really have that much hard engage outside of the Malphite ult. Here we go, though. Weaver's wall comes in. Krogs and Stand United is going down, but it's not going to be enough to finish him off. Deadly finds a double and turns it into a third as well. And now Krogson is looking to stun up that Malphite. The top laner drops, and it's a quadra kill for the AD carry. Deadly looking to repeat his I-58 performance right now as Ido Una is going to be locked up by Jet. He's got him low. Can he donate it to Deadly? They're trying to get the AD carry over. They're trying to donate the pentakill, and he isn't going to be able to get it. They go onto the fountain for it and everything. But in the end, they're just feeding kills to the enemy AD carry. This was such a ridiculous play coming out from TCA. Potentially overconfident and frankly giving up inhibitors for no reason.
I feel like that could have gone a lot worse if Ido Una had picked up all 4 of those kills though, because he would suddenly be absolutely huge. But even so, that kind of play from TCA is obviously a bit, you know, I don't want to use the word disrespectful, because, you know, they kind of, I think everyone's sort of friends here, but at the same time, overconfident as you mentioned to go that deep, even though you hadn't actually obviously won the game. But it is still 11k goal difference for GLB against GLB here. So
I wouldn't have said it was wrong to say that's disrespectful. Like, they have one inhibitor, it's 22 minutes, and they're diving onto the fountain.
As
like,
4 men, and then all die as well. They don't even get the penta.
I think that's a little bit overkill, but I mean, on the other side of that, you do have to be a little bit bloodthirsty for those pentakills, especially first game of the Premiership as well, to get a pentakill. That certainly would be making their mark, but in the end, it doesn't quite go their way. And I was going to say it kind of gives GLB a way back in, but realistically, Una getting 2 kills in trade of Deadly getting 4, it's still going the way of TCA.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, as I kind of mentioned, like if Una had actually got all of those kills, it would have been kind of even, but TCA, I believe, lost 2 people to the Nexus Tower, and they didn't get gold over. So really, the fight, as you mentioned, was just kind of like a 4 for 2.
And this is that kind of unlucky scenario you were talking about. That kind of RNG that comes in with Dragons. The 3 Infernal Drakes is going to mean that Deadly can melt these players all that much quicker. And he's going to be going straight onto Una, who just has to blink right on out of there. Jet has no fear, though, as he courageous over the wall. And it's going to be Lukey trying to zone away the rest of the team. Plex manages to find one, though, onto Deadly, who, you know, I feel like he's getting a little bit overconfident at this stage. Yeah,
I mean, I couldn't agree more here. Like, Deadly, obviously, as the Lucian, kind of the main damage dealer for the team right now, especially with how ahead he is. Okay, Plex just got deleted.
Goodbye.
One shot.
That's what happened to Plex in the gank earlier as well.
That's why
United, though, is going to come on through. The fight continues as Yopper finally arrives and looks for the Shadow Dash. He gets the flash off, and Una will be going down. It's traded, though, as the enemy mid laner in Krogson is going to drop as well. Yopper is so tanky. He's been holding on to this inhibitor tower aggro for a long time, but he messes up the Shadow Dash. Bad news for the tanky top laner, but it just doesn't matter. With the shields coming through from Raisins on top of his resistances, it feels like there's no way to kill it.
Yeah, I mean, Yopper is just so far ahead at this point that it doesn't even matter. I don't think we're going to see the inhibitor fall here because the 2 tanks will just kind of bully the minions down there. Sort of bruisers versus bruisers and the minion versus Malphite matchup. Jet, does he have the ult?
He's looking for a 1v1 in this jungle. Lifestyle can get the Bracy. That was completely out of vision as well, I've got to say. Nice little snipe coming out from him. The marksman in the jungle, Lifestyle coming into play. And maybe this is a good opportunity for GLB. You know, the longer this game goes on, the less that 10k gold lead will matter. It's still very significant right now, and with the Infernal Drakes, like, I don't want to underestimate the lead they have, but
this 1v1,
Plex actually going for a 1v1. Weaver's Wall going to be the first call as Zonny tries to get onto the AD carry. He's going to get the slowdown, and Deadly's in trouble. Teleport going to land in that top lane from Yopper, though. And in the end, this might just have to be a disengage from GLB because their health bars are not looking fantastic. Lifestyle goes into the backline, though, and finds Deadly for himself. Fantastic start to the fight here, coming through for GLB. They pick up the support as well, and suddenly, GLB, they're potentially looking to get back into this game. Baron is up. They have their jungler available. Smite is actually on cooldown, though, so maybe need to be a little bit cautious on this.
We've got to watch for this Syndra flank as well. And wow, they could actually win this fight, though.
Yeah, Yopper has gone in, but they don't actually have any damage. I say that. Take it back. Hecarim is on the scene. Lukey is going to get locked up by the Shadow Dash. He'll get taken down for a double kill in the hands of Yopper. And Nocturnal Plex is running for the hills, but there's no way you can outrun the pony. He's charging on down, and Jet is looking to finish this one off, but Plex doing a fantastic job of kiting right now. The Rylai's coming into play, you're absolutely right, and will get knocked back. Yopper can't quite land the Shadow Dash, and that's going to be a kill going the way of Plex. Yopper has to back away. What a play coming out from the Stoneweaver.
I mean, TCA here are just being way too overconfident. Not really sure why they aren't looking to sort of actually group an end, but
Lifestyle fighting off more than he can chew. The Land Shark does go down. He's going to sink in the end, but in the end, trade 1 for 1. I think they're going to be happy with that one. Mythplex grabbing a kill for himself. TCA, I don't want to say it too early, but I think they might be throwing this.
I mean, it does look that way. I think they're still so far ahead that if they just clicked and went, okay, we're actually going to try and end this game, that they have the gold lead, that they could do it. That being said, though, with the current way that they're playing, if they keep this up for a few more minutes, it could be disastrous to them, but instead Plex just sort of gets dead lead
He just gets mown down by the culling. Oh, you could say he gets culled. I think that's
yeah,
a fair way to say
yeah.
it in that one. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to say that GLB are pulling themselves back into it. TCA are making these ridiculously overconfident plays, and they're getting punished for it. But then GLB do the same thing. Like, Plex should not have been that far up the lane. It's as simple as that.
Well, the lead that TCA commands here allows them to get all of this vision control down, and vision leads to things like the Baron, which we're currently seeing, where they can do it at least slightly comfortably. But there is an opening here for GLB to be able to win this.
There is a threat here, and smites are going to go down. It's Jet that picks it up in the end. Zoni arrives on the scene to try and block for his teammates, but Jet is more than happy to trample him as he looks for Ida Una as well. But Lifestyle is going to be the first one to drop as they trade junglers into the hands of the AD carries. And now it's Ida Una who chased a little bit too deep and will be shut down for it. Yoppa grabs that kill credit for himself as Luki is more than happy to tank up the ultimate from Deadly. But Deadly just deletes the enemy mid laner, and he's looking for more. Luki has to flash away, and goodbye mid lane inhibitor. TCA are knocking on the door.
Yeah, with the current respawn timers as well for GLB, this does look like it could possibly be game one, if not double inhib leading into, essentially going back, rebuying all of your items. But it does look like TCA is going to try and end this game here. Most likely going to be able to as well, unless the Malphite.
They should be able to finish this one off, I think, with the Infernal Drakes as well, increasing their damage. Syndra's happy to keep them on the fountain, almost getting another kill. And it is going to be the game, and in fact, this series going the way of TCA in the end. Obviously, they won the first map purely by default.
Yep.
GLB couldn't field a roster for the first game. Second game, commanding defeat of their opponents right there.
Yeah, I mean, fantastic play from TCA from pretty much every position. There was that one very slight slip up in the early game where they thought they were the ones making the big play, but Plex was able to come in and flank with the Talia ult. But that being said, I think TCA just showed a very dominant performance overall.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a little bit overconfident in parts, and I feel like, when you've got that big of a lead, you can get away with it a little bit. And TCA proving that as they went for a 20-minute fountain dive. But in the end, fair and square, I think, going the way of TCA. They definitely had just some sheer team dominance towards the start of that game. Just the plays that they were orchestrating as a full five were honestly very impressive.
Yeah, we saw a lot of this from I-58 as well, where they had this teamwork. They were kind of like the teamwork team.
Yeah.
And they may not have the greatest talent in each individual role, but they do have this teamwork and this communication that they've been working on for many, many months. And it's so nice when you see it all come together into sort of such a performance as the one we just saw now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you can see on your screens, it is going to be Last Remedy up against Perilous Void next. We'll see who TCA is going to fight in the semi-final after this short break. Don't go anywhere.